First of all, welcome. And are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? It's not showing. So, Diana? All right, everyone, we just have to probably reset the system, so just a minute, please. And ideas shared with us from our community members. As this is a public matter under the Planning Act, to consider applications under the Planning Act, if a person or public body does not make oral written submission to the City of Kitchener before the proposed applications are considered, the person or public body may not be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal. So we have two items before us, 6.1, official plan amendment, and zoning bylaw amendment for 4553 Cortlandt Avenue. Mr. Bateman, you have a presentation first, so whenever you're ready, please go.
I do, Mr. Chair, and good evening, Chair, committee members, and members of the public. I'll get closer so everyone can hear me, that's better. My name is Brian Bateman, and I'm very pleased to be bringing forward a staff report recommending approval of an OPA ZBA for the redevelopment of 45 to 53 Cortlandt Avenue. Just bear with me, I have technical difficulty here. Oh, there we go. My apologies. So this slide shows the aerial photograph of the subject lands. They're outlined in white, and it really is to give context. And it's within an existing neighborhood, the Mill Cortlandt neighborhood, and it's located just east of Cortlandt Avenue and Benton Street intersection. Cortlandt Avenue is a regional roadway. The property is currently vacant, and it comprises three properties, 45, 49, and 53 Cortlandt Avenue East, with a total area of about 0.23 hectares. The surrounding built form of the area consists of low-rise residential to the west and south and commercial to the east. And I really want to draw your attention to three things with this slide. First, in terms of the broader context, the neighborhood, which unfortunately is not shown here because you wouldn't be able to see the property, subject property otherwise. But it is close to downtown Kitchener. There are transit station stops close, and the subject site is within a major transit station area. Secondly, as mentioned, Cortlandt Avenue is a regional roadway, and because of that, and because of the fact that it's within a major transit station area, we are encouraging density along this section of the corridor. And thirdly, the subject site is adjacent to low-rise residential on Benton, south of Cortlandt, and also on Martin Street. And I think the objective here is, because it's very close proximity to low-rise residential, we're really trying to balance density and growth in this area with compatibility. And then, in my opinion, this has been achieved, and as you'll see in the next few slides, that will become apparent. Here is the site plan of the property. I apologize, it's in black and white. I'm hoping Andrea has a colorized version of it. I'm sure she does. But really what this is trying to illustrate, or wants to illustrate, is it's a 6-story multiple dwelling. There's approximately 64 to 65 units, and that'll be confirmed at the site plan. There's 52 parking spaces, and that's in both underground and surface parking. And there's a single point of access onto Cortlandt Avenue. And I'll just note that with this plan, the massing has been pulled away from those low-rise areas, that being to the north and to the south of this, or sorry, to the west and to the south of this property. And there's a rear yard setback of 19 meters for this property, which again just helps with compatibility and just gives you an idea of how far the building has been pushed away. Here are the building renderings. This shows the front and rear views. The front is at the left, the rear is at the right, and really what I'm trying to highlight here is it's a mid-rise building form, 6 stories. We don't have a lot of these in Kitchener, and I think it's a great location to have that. It incorporates step backs, so again, to really improve compatibility. And the other thing is with those step backs, there's a really breaking up of massing, again, to really drive home compatibility within the neighborhood. With all of our plans, or most of our plans, there's planning instruments that we need to implement that concept plan that I just showed you, and that implementation is done through an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. And here we're going from, in terms of the official plan, we're going from low-density commercial residential and low-density commercial residential with special policy area 6 to low-density commercial residential with special policy 16. And the effect of that policy, of special policy 16, is really to fixes the floor space ratio, it fixes the height and the rear yard setback. So it's really matching the concept to the implementation that we're trying to achieve through the official plan. And I will note with the official plan, in terms of both the schedule and the OPA document, Schedule A has been changed. This is to reflect correctly the 2 areas of amendments that are required for this property, and that the OPA document has had some minor wordsmithing done to it as well. Again, it's really to fix the FSR and to really drive home, and we've added a little bit more to the basis of the amendment, the minimum rear yard setback, a maximum building height, and the requirement for a holding provision has been sort of added to kind of strengthen that amendment. That has been sent to you already. The proposed zoning is going from commercial residential 1 and commercial residential 1 with special regulation provision 130R, this is a mouthful here, to CR1 or commercial residential 1 with special regulation provision 786R and holding provision 98H. And again, really the bylaw takes what we've put in the official plan, it places regulations to stipulate maximum building height, a floor space ratio, and a rear yard setback, and a lower visitor parking rate, which are really specific to the development proposal. And again, I will note, the same with the OPA, there's been some changes. We've removed the specific parking requirements in favor of including the parking rate at 0.7 spaces and a 10% visitor parking rate. Opportunity. Well, this will bring many opportunities in my mind. It will be a development of a 6-story mid-rise building. It will add dwelling units to the city's inventory, which we are sorely needing. It will contribute to a diversity of housing within the neighborhood, and especially within the Mill Courtland neighborhood. And in my mind, in my opinion, the design built form is compatible with the neighborhood. So highlights and conclusions. I'm obviously, as I've mentioned, I'm recommending approval of these applications, and that's to permit the floor space ratio and to facilitate the development of a 6-story multiple dwelling, and to really establish parking rates and in the building envelope that's being shown with the development application. The proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments demonstrate good planning principles and are consistent with provincial, regional, and city planning policies. Thank you, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Bateman. And we'll go to our delegations first, and then we'll come back to staff for questions of the application. And Mr. Bateman, so there is a change to, I guess, what's being asked of through the zone change in OPA. Staff requesting amendment. Is that already in the report, or like you've gave a bit of an explanation? Should I state it out? Is it necessary? Should it be read out for the benefit of the committee? Sorry, give me a second. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, might I recommend that should council wish to recommend approval of the zoning bylaw amendment and the official plan amendment, that the clause that pursuant to section 3417 of the Planning Act as amended, further notice is not required to be given with respect to zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 2217 CBB. That is a technicality in the planning report where council has to waive additional notice because the bylaw was amended during the statutory public meeting.
Okay, so when the item is moved, the committee will take that as the amended report?
Yes.
Thank you, as stated. All right, so we'll go on to our delegation, which is, I think, Andrea Sinclair. Ms. Sinclair, you have 5 minutes to make a delegation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of council. I think this is my first time presenting to the new council. So for those who do not know me, I'm Andrea Sinclair. I'm a partner with MHBC. I'm joined today by Julianne Von Westerholt, an associate MHBC and a familiar face to many of you in council chambers. Stuart Fraser and Paul Faraday with Cantero are also registered as a Zoom delegation. So if there's any questions of the developer, they are available to respond. For the benefit of council, I wanted to go through a little bit of a design evolution. We presented this at the neighborhood meeting, so I know in particular for Councillor Chapman this will be a repeat, but where this project started was with a 6-story U-shaped building with setbacks significantly closer to Martin Street. Through consultation with both staff and the surrounding neighborhood, this project has continued to evolve. So when we came in with our second sort of pre-consultation, we had a 5-story scheme, but again, set much closer to Martin Street. At this point, we had a higher FSR, and we were only at a 7.6 meter setback. It was suggested through the pre-consultation process that we look at going to 6 stories, but pulling back to allow for a bigger setback from the residents to the behind on Martin Street. So this next slide shows our current proposal, where we've gone from a 7.6 meter setback to more than 19 meters from the rear property line. As well with this proposal, where we are proposing a reduced setback is adjacent to the old Schneider's property, so that we can maximize the side yard setback from, again, surrounding residential properties. And I do have the color version of the site plan. This has also evolved through the process from when we first submitted until what you're seeing here this evening. The most significant changes being that the overall building depth was reduced. This allowed us to have an increased front yard setback and to be generally in alignment with the property to the west. Also to increase the rear yard setback. We've also relocated the driveway entrance. So originally you were going to come in off Cortland and go right into the underground. That's now been set up so it's not visible from the public street. We've increased the outdoor amenity space, have located more of the bicycle parking indoors, and all while maintaining still a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units in this proposal. You've already seen, this is the proposed front yard facade rendering. This shows really that relocated garage entrance. You can see that it's tucked away in behind. It's not coming right in off Courtright. There's a very pronounced lobby entrance. We've done a defined base that pulls in sort of the brick from the surrounding neighborhood, while still incorporating some contemporary design aspects. And I'm just going to move quickly through. This was the previous rear facade, and this is something that really evolved through our discussions with the residents on Martin Street. They were concerned this was a little too heavy, a little too flat. So as we've worked through the process, we've come at this revised rendering, which we all think is a positive change to the development. You can now see that the brick ground floor is located at closer point, where all the upper stories are now set back additional from that. Balconies are built into the building, so rather than the balconies projecting outward, they're flush with the units beside. And this was quite well received during the neighborhood meeting as a positive change. In terms of responses from the public, there was a number of submissions, both positive and some with concerns, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but some of the things we heard was concern about building height, and for those who have maybe been out to the site, the previous buildings all sat on top of a pretty high berm, so the concern was that this was going to be sitting up on top of this berm, and sorry, my glasses just broke, is going to be sitting up on the berm. This is going to be graded. The berm was an artificial berm, so the new development will really be almost flush with the city sidewalk, so we're not going to have that additional height. In terms of overlook, as I've explained, we're now more than 19 meters setback at the rear yard, which significantly exceeds the zoning requirement. Same with the westerly side yard setback, exceeds the zoning requirement. In terms of unit variety, we have 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And then in terms of affordable housing, this project is not proposing affordable units. We looked at both this project, and some of you may be aware of Cantiro's other project on King Street. The King Street project's directly on LRT. It's a purpose-built rental, and what they've done is they made a commitment to council for 5% affordable in that project. That's actually been increased and is now providing 15% of the units as affordable. It's very challenging to do affordable in this project with the low number of units, but it's still a more attainable form of housing, and at this point, the tenure is unknown. If it goes to ownership, it could be that some of the units fall into that affordability, but we just don't know what the price point is going to be. So those are all my comments. I'm here to answer any questions, and as I mentioned, the developers are also available as a future delegation if there's questions of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. There are some questions. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for bringing us this revised version. I think it shows a great willingness to work with the residents, so I think that's much appreciated. I just had a few questions. First of all, you said there will be 2 and 3 story bedroom, or not story, 2 and 3 bedroom units. Do you know the breakdown on that?
Yeah. Believe it or not, I don't have it memorized, but I do have the numbers in front of me. So we've got 47 one-bedrooms, 14 two-bedrooms, and 4 three-bedrooms.
Okay, so that 4 3-bedroom hasn't changed, I don't think, from the original.
No, I think we've had 4 from the beginning. We've always had 3-bedroom units, and I believe it's the same. They've sort of changed within the building location, but the number, I believe, is still the same.
Okay. And regarding the use, well, you still don't know whether it's going to be rental or like condo owned units, or?
Sorry, I'm just having trouble here.
Will it be rental or condos?
The tenure, will it be rental or condos?
Still to be determined. We're not, as you can appreciate, the market's in a bit of a odd place right now, so it's not known for sure at this time. It may be rental or it may end up being ownership.
Okay. The other question I had is with the setback from I guess it's the west side of the building. Like you said that you had reduced it on the one side to give more on the other side, but what is that actual setback?
It's in excess of 9 meters, so you have the full driveway width plus landscape buffer between the driveway and the additional residential, and then another bit of a buffer between the driveway and the building. So it's, I don't have the exact number, but I know it's more than 9 meters, whereas I think the requirement is 3.
Okay. My final question has to do with, I've been in touch with residents in the area, and one of the requests was a meeting with the city and with myself and the developer, once we get a bit further down in the process. Is that something that you're willing to commit to?
We tried to have one in February and got hit by a storm, so that is very much the intent, and Jane, one of the residents, has been very helpful in sort of coordinating with all of her neighbors. So what we've decided is we'll try to maybe wait till late March, early April, when the snow is behind us and we can actually see what we're doing. So as we're working through the more detailed site plan process, we did commit to the neighbors that we'd be more than happy to meet on site, review the grading of their properties, review the grading that's proposed. What I can say is we are intending to match grade at the property lines, provide new privacy fencing and landscape screening, but yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, we haven't had the best weather for an on-site meeting, but when the snow melts, and also with Cantiro being in Alberta, their preference is to be able to be there in person. So we are hoping in late March, early April that we'll be having that meeting. And you are, of course, welcome to attend that.
So thank you for making those accommodations.
Thank you.
Councillor Clancy.
Just curious if there'll be any thought to using sustainable building practices?
There is, for sure. We, as part of the official plan amendment zoning applications, a sustainability statement was required and was prepared, so it outlined a number of measures in terms of building design, other things like, obviously the provision of bicycle parking. We're also providing parking for e-bikes, which is something we're seeing more demand for. Paul Faraday is probably better to get into the more detailed sustainable measures in terms of building design, but there are a number of things that we are hoping to incorporate here and that they incorporate sort of as a standard on all of their projects.
Thank you.
All right, that seems to be all the questions from the committee. I just had, go ahead if you want to. Okay, all right. Councillor Michaud? Okay, so we're going to go to questions, and we have another delegation, then we're going to go to staff, and then we'll make comments afterwards. But I'll come back to you first. Thank you. Just a few clarification questions. It goes to show that extensive effort has been taken in trying to consult with the community and also be reflective on the comments received from the community. Right now, we're looking at
65 units.
65 units. Where did you start off with?
Oh, that's a good question. The original U-shaped proposal, I believe it was in excess of 100. I wasn't involved in that early stage. It was sort of a whole different crew. Actually, Julianne did the original pre-com when she was at the city, but I think we started over 100, and then I think when this actual application went in, it was right around, I think it was 64. So it's been pretty consistent once it's been submitted, but there was a lot of work before we got to the point of a formal submission, kind of between that pre-consultation and submission, and staff had a lot of really great comments, and I think we all feel that where we've landed is actually significantly stronger than the original proposal, so we're quite happy with what's before you tonight.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you're happy with what you have, but I just wanted to get some context of where we started off and where we're settling. And because it raised a bit of a point in my mind when you specified about the context about affordability and trying to create the pro forma to allow certain units to be affordable within a scope of this project. So had it been 100 plus units, could there have been opportunity for some affordable housing units?
Potentially. It's hard to say because parking was a challenge with that, and there's always, a mix between what we're able to support from a zoning perspective on parking, but then what the market's going to really require. It may have required going down a second level of underground, which the cost of that is significant. I think the building design itself, that U-shaped design too, was not overly efficient and was a much more costly build. So it's hard to really say. I think certainly the lower number of units is a factor in affordability, but as I mentioned, they really felt the King Street project lends itself better to it, especially being purpose-built rental, and that's where we've sort of focused those efforts.
Okay. With the Quintero Group, the last project, I'm familiar with what they have brought forward for the King Street. Is this their second project, or have they done anything else?
This is their second in
the region,
Kitchener.
Or?
I'm sorry?
In Kitchener? Or
in Kitchener, and they're looking to do more in Waterloo region, but so far they've all been in Kitchener.
Okay, well, that's great. I don't see anyone else, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Jane Peller, and Jane will be joining us through a virtual delegation. Ms. Peller, you have 5 minutes to make your delegation. Whenever you're ready, you can proceed. Your mic's off. Oh, your mic is still off.
There we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my comments.
Ms. Peller, your mic is off. Is it our sound, or?
How are we okay now?
Oh, we can hear you now. We can hear you now.
Great. Sorry, my screen is frozen, so it's hard to tell. My name is Jane Peller, and I live at 16 Martin Street, which is to the rear of this proposed development. You're not going to be surprised to hear me say that change is, in well-established neighborhoods, is a very emotional challenge. The Schneider Creek community is not new to change and will continue to see more in the coming years. When we as a community penned Making Our Neighborhood Great, which outlined our character and dreams for the future, it was with hope that we could contribute and help shape our community. We want a strong, vibrant future for all of us. Working with and welcoming good developers that have an interest in our community, as well as their bottom line, is key. We prefer developers and projects that demonstrate an interest in the process, where changes or compromises to their designs are willingly made as good faith neighbors. We too are keenly aware of our own responsibility to find compromise. Quintero, their planners at MHBC, and Brian Bateman reached out to us for 2 meetings to get feedback on this proposed project. We're thankful for the opportunity and pleased to learn that Quintero has shown a willingness to not only receive our feedback, but have applied it to their designs. My husband and I are not thrilled with the request for increased height at SR, but it can be frustrating to the community when our capable planning department assigns zoning to properties based on meeting growth targets only to be asked for more by developers, or, as in this case, to be suggested. It's tough to swallow as a homeowner. However, we feel that there are a number of factors to consider here. We've been allotted a 19-meter setback from our rear property to the building, which is amazing. The hill will be excavated to address our lower grade here on Martin. There's a tree saving plan, and most importantly, the building is stacked or situated as close to Portland Avenue as possible. When we add to this the use of 2 and 3 bedroom units, towns at the front, the enclosed balconies, and the changes that were made based on our feedback, we have come to the conclusion that there are many benefits for all here in this project. So despite the increased height in FSR and the more modern design, we are in fact in support of the amendments to the official plan and to the zoning bylaw. But we would like to also note that Martin Street Neighbors and MHBC, Quintero, and Brian Bateman will be doing a site walk to address some remaining questions regarding the rear property elevation change, the need for some maybe potential retaining wall, fencing, lighting, plantings, etc. later in March. Thank you so much to MHBC's planners Amanda Sinclair, Julianne Westerful, and Quintero, as well as Brian Bateman, for setting a positive example for community engagement and for openly hearing our feedback and for answering all of our questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you for presenting. Councillor Chapman has a question of you.
Okay, sure.
Hi, Jane, thank you for coming in. I didn't realize I didn't know you were coming, so I actually was going to stop this question, but now that you're here, I'll ask you.
Okay.
I'm sure you heard about the amendments or the changes to the report. There's some tweaks that
Yes.
were made today, so I just wanted
Yes.
to get your response to those changes.
Well, in fact, they're just reassurances that the height of 6 stories and the 19-meter setback remain the same in writing, so that this build will actually occur the way it is meant to occur. So there haven't been any really specific changes.
Okay, and as always, thanks for your willingness to work with the developer and the work that you've done, so that's great.
Oh, thanks. I'd like to compliment them very much because I think they set a really great example, and I'm hopeful for their continuing contributions to the community in this desire to talk to community members. So that was really great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jane. That's everyone.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll open up for questions of staff. I see none. Can I get a mover for the item? Moved by, Councillor Bordini, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question for staff. So, I mean, going through this, 52 parking spaces for 64 residential units. I'm assuming if we're going to have 47 one-bedroom, I'm guessing it's 47, I believe that was what the number was. Are we assuming that those living in the one-bedroom probably will not have cars? I'm just a bit concerned that the numbers are a bit off and might lead to people parking on the streets and things of the like.
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, The applicants had submitted a traffic study for this particular development, obviously. They're implementing a number of TDM measures. Given the location, as I've mentioned, to major transit station area, proximity to the downtown, there is more than ample parking for the site. I think we're asking for 0.7, it's really closer to 0.8, which is quite good for, I think, for the location that it's at. And they're also providing bicycle parking, so I'm confident, I think our transportation planning staff is confident that the parking won't be an issue for the neighborhood. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Just to further, to add on to Councilor O'Dooney's question regarding parking and sometimes, general impacts when you do have intensification like this. This is within the MTSA guidelines, I guess, within the 500 meters?
Correct.
What's the parking requirement within the 500 boundary? Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we will be introducing those as part of our MTSA work later this year. We are looking at significantly reducing and potentially exempting parking within MTSAs, but our final numbers, we are crunching those numbers now, and we'll bring that to council later this year when we look at land use and zoning for the rest of the MTSA.
Okay, that's what I thought. I wasn't sure. I know a while back we had looked at potentially considering zero parking, and this still seems to meet some of that parking requirements. Mr. Bateman, did you have? Okay, you keyed in, so I wasn't sure.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. All right, so the item has been moved. Comments? I'll come to you first, Councilor Michaud, because you have rung in.
Thank you. I just want to commend all the work that was put into this project, and to listen to the planning department and the client and the residents. It's really refreshing to see how the collaboration took place and how it came, the end result is something that everyone's going to be happy with. So I really, and I love the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom ratio in this building as well. So well done.
All right, thank you. Councilor Ioannidis?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Singh. I just wanted to say that it's really great to see the applicant work very well with the community and going through our report and seeing all from the residents, all the supportive emails, which is quite different from what we normally see in that section. So it was really good to see. And again, I know from their last project that they were here, that was quite a significant community benefits that they were looking at adding, and they're continuing to prove that they're a good working partner for our city.
Thank you, Councilor Ioannidis. Councilor Johnston?
Yes, thank you, Chair Singh, and I echo the comments of my colleagues. It's very refreshing to see the willingness to work with the community, to meet with the community, to make concessions, and to think a little outside of the box. And it's very refreshing. So thank you so much. It's quite. I'm excited to see this come to fruition. Thank you.
All right, that seems to be all the comments. I'll quickly just add my own. This seems to be a well-fit development proposal that doesn't go too far outside of the scope of what's being built in this neighborhood, as well as what the current zoning is. On top of it, as kind of articulated by my colleagues, this seems to be a development iteration of change through consultation with the community, as well as guidance through our staff as well, who have been complimented about the process. So I want to once more compliment our staff. So it's always good to hear positive feedback from our citizens, and our planning staff doesn't always get that. I'm glad when you do, because you do good work, I think, in every case. On top of it, this is, from a developer that's choosing to build in the rental market space, so we have to support and champion those type of builds. I would hope that this also ends up being a rental, because that's something that we have a very small supply of. And that too, on top of it, it's a developer that's choosing to, on their own, look at opportunities for affordable housing when the pro forma of a project makes sense. And especially them, where they had initially promised 5%, but now as their project on King Street is further along that evolution, are now projecting closer to 15%. That's a huge win for our community. And that was why I had initially asked the question of where we started and where we ended up with, as feedback and consultation is important, but at the same time, there needs to be a balance where we don't end up declining too much from the ability for a developer to, be answerable to their investors and make sense of that project, while at the same time meeting all the needs of the community as well. But it seems like we fit the right balance with this project. With that, I'll take the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you very much. And this will go to council. We'll move on to item number 2. And that is the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 4396 King Street East and 25 Sportsworld Drive, Sportsworld Shopping Center, and Taylorwood Park Homes, Inc. Mr. Penal, you will be presenting first. When you're ready, please proceed. And just before I key you in, on the previous item, as it was supported with the amendment as iterated by Mr. Stevenson. Go ahead, Mr. Penal.
Good evening, Chair Singh, members of the committee. Before you is an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, or OPA and ZBA, for the subject properties addressed as 4396 King Street East and 25 Sportsworld Drive. If approved, these applications would permit the lands to be redeveloped with high-density, mixed-use development. These applications should not be confused with the OPA ZBA for 4220 King Street East and 25 Sportsworld Crossing Road, which are located nearby, have similar addresses and similar features. Council approved those applications in December of 2022. The subject lands are irregular in shape and have frontage of approximately 120 meters on King Street East, 122 meters on Sportsworld Drive, and a site area of approximately 1 hectare or 2.5 acres. The lands comprise 2 contiguous properties. 4396 King Street East is currently developed with a 1-story commercial multi-tenant plaza, and 25 Sportsworld Drive is the site of the former Pioneer Barbecue Restaurant. It was demolished a few years ago. The subject lands are completely surrounded by commercially developed and commercially designated and commercially zoned lands. Costco Wholesale is located immediately to the east. The lands are within proximity to the existing planned and major transportation infrastructure, including the existing GRT Sportsworld Station, GO Bus Terminal, Highway 8, and Highway 401. The subject land is located more than 112 meters from the nearest residential dwelling within the Pioneer Tower West residential community. On the screen is a map prepared by the region of the Sportsworld Major Transit Station Area, or MTSA. The lands in question tonight that we're discussing are designated or are identified as an MTSA within the urban structure of the city's official plan. The future ION platform will be located 300 meters to the northwest, as shown by the yellow dot on that plan. The subject property is outlined in white. The planned function of a major transit station area is to provide density and development that will support transit and rapid transit with a mix of residential, office, institutional, and commercial uses. The OPA application requests to change the city's official plan designation from commercial campus to mixed use with a site-specific policy area. The OPA would permit dwelling units and would permit the floor space ratio to be 6.2, and it would limit the building height to 99 meters or 30 stories in height. The current COM4 zone does not permit dwelling units and does not have any building height or floor space ratio limitations at the present time. The zoning bylaw amendment, or ZBA, would change the zoning from campus commercial, or COM4, to mixed use 3, mixed 3, with site-specific provision 358. The ZBA would allow dwelling units, would allow for development phasing to occur. It would permit 1,300 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor. It would permit a floor space ratio of 6.2, a maximum building height of 99 meters or 30 stories. It would reduce the side yard setback adjacent to Costco by 1 meter, so down to 3 meters from 4. And it would slightly reduce the parking ratio, among other matters. 2 holding provisions are also proposed. 40H and 41H would require the submission of a detailed noise study as well as a record of site condition, and those would have to be to the satisfaction of the Region of Waterloo. The requested amendments would facilitate the redevelopment of the subject lands with a proposed development concept, which is shown on the screen. The proposed development consists of 2 buildings. Firstly, an 8-story residential building located at the north end of the site. This is identified as Phase 1. Secondly, a mixed-use building identified as Phase 2, which features a 30-story tower located close to the intersection, and an 18-story tower located to the east, fronting onto King Street East. The 2 towers are connected via a 5-story podium. A total of 616 dwelling units are proposed, as well as 1,400 square meters of ground floor commercial space. A large common outdoor amenity space is located on top of the podium for residents to use for recreation. Parking is primarily contained within the base of Building B, which is Phase 2. And this would be in the form of 2 levels of underground parking and 5 levels of screened structured parking. I've shown a conceptual rendering on the screen, and this rendering shows the building massing along King Street as well as Sports World Drive. The larger mixed-use building, Building B, is shown in the foreground, and it's oriented to both street frontages. I'll let the applicant speak further to the design in their presentation. And planning staff suggests that this development proposal represents an opportunity. The committee has an opportunity to significantly increase the housing supply and residential density within an MTSA while not losing commercial floor area. The proposal will assist in meeting the city's intensification target of 160 residents and jobs per hectare. The Sports World MTSA currently only has a density of 39 residents and jobs per hectare, and this proposal would bring that number up to approximately 50. The proposal will diversify the housing stock and provide an additional housing choice in the Pioneer Tower area. Right now, the area is mostly dominated in the Pioneer Tower West with single detached dwellings. Housing diversity is needed to meet the needs of an increasingly diverse population. There's an opportunity as well to redevelop an underutilized parcel of land with new compatible uses and densities that align with the city's official plan and help to achieve complete community. Furthermore, the proposed buildings, along with those at the recently approved Tri-Car development, 4220 King Street East, will begin to establish a distinctive skyline within the Sports World MTSA. These buildings will contribute positively to the skyline, which will evolve as the MTSA develops over time. Planning staff is of the opinion that the applications are consistent with the policies of the provincial policy statement. They conform to the growth plan, regional official plan, the City of Kitchener official plan and represent good planning. Accordingly, planning staff recommends that the OPA be adopted and the ZBA be approved. Thank you. I'm here for questions.
Thank you. We'll come back to staff for questions afterwards. First, we'll go to our delegations. We have two. I'll take the in-person delegation first. James Hughes. Oh, I'm so sorry, Christine. We should have I don't know why I went blank on this one. We should have a delegation from the proponent first. Lapse of judgment over here. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Again, Ms. Bearsdale, as you know, you have 5 minutes to make your delegations, and Ms. Bearsdale is here on behalf, from GSP Group on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Singh and members of committee. As touched on, we are the agents acting on behalf of Sports World Shopping Centres and Taylorwood Park Homes with respect to the proposed development. So I'm going to just start my presentation with a brief overview of the site context. As Mr. Pennell pointed out, the property is located on the north side of King Street, on the east side of Sports World Drive. It is currently occupied by an existing commercial plaza situated right at the corner, and it was occupied by the former Pioneer Barbecue. It is now occupied by a temporary car dealership, used car sales dealership. Property is surrounded by existing commercial uses. You can see it in here on the red. Essentially, all of the development along the south side of King Street, as well as the majority of the development to the north side of King Street, is existing commercial uses. As Mr. Pennell pointed out, it's proximate to a transit terminal located at Sports Road Crossing, which contains a Grand River Transit Terminal, a GO Station Terminal, and a Greyhound Terminal. That's approximately 300 meters to the north. It is also proximate to the existing Sports World Rec Complex, which is again about 300 meters to the north. There is future LRT station planned along King Street, and the site is easily accessible to Highway 401 as well as Highway 8. As Mr. Pennell touched on, and what I'm showing you on the slide is the 4220 King Street project, the Tri-Car project again, which was approved by council just before Christmas, just so as not to confuse the two. What you see here on the image right now is from the region's most recent information with respect to the LRT. You can see it coming along the King Street frontage. What I've highlighted in yellow are the two future stations, both on the north side and the south side of King Street. The proposed development concept, as Mr. Pennell touched on, is comprised of two phases. Phase 1, which is on the north part of the property, is the smaller of the two buildings. It is going to be where the former Pioneer Barbecue was. It's an 8-story building that's comprised of 88 dwelling units. And then the second phase of development, which is the larger building on the south side of the property, is comprised of a 5-story podium with a total of 30-story tower on the left-hand side of the screen, closest to the intersection of King and Sports World, and an 18-story tower at the right-hand side of the screen. You'll notice that the site proposes to consolidate the two driveway access that exist right now. As it stands, 4396 King has its own access, and 25 Sports World has its own access onto Sports World Drive. The intent is to have those be comprised or be consolidated to one access, shifted further north from the intersection. And then the proposed development does include a right-in, right-out access only on King Street, would operate similar in fashion to the Costco access. What I'm highlighting here is some ground floor amenity space that's been identified for future site plan details. This is approximately 900 square meters of space that will be used to provide for some ground level enhanced landscaping, perhaps seating areas, patio areas, etc. for residents. So what you see in front of you right now is the proposed first phase of development, the 8-story tower. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see the first floor, the ground floor area. The uses in brown and blue are the proposed residential units. It's comprised of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. The area in pink that you see flanking either side of the building is proposed amenity space for residents. So this would be private amenity space, meeting rooms, media rooms, game rooms, etc. And then the white in the middle is all of the functional space of the proposed development. The slide you see now is Phase 2, the ground floor podium. So all the brown that you see around the perimeter of the site is the proposed commercial uses. You can see that they have been situated predominantly along King Street and then wrapping slightly around Sports World Drive with podium parking tucked in behind. This is the ground floor. As Mr. Pennell touched on, there is also 2 floors of underground parking. Oh, my mistake, sorry. You see here on the left-hand side of the screen, this is the first floor podium parking, floors 2 through 4 you'll see. So again, you'll see residential units flanking the King Street frontage as well as wrapping around the Sports World frontage. And my apologies, the description is wrong on this, but on the right-hand side of the screen, that would be the fourth floor of parking. The blue units are 1-bedroom units, the yellow units are 2-bedroom units, and you'll see at the top hand of both, there are proposed 3-bedroom units. There will be a total of 596 parking spaces provided, shared between both sites for residents as well as visitors, and this also includes some of the commercial parking requirements for anyone visiting the site for the commercial uses. On the left-hand side of the screen, this is the typical floor plate for the 30-story tower. What you see on the pink is what would be assigned to the fifth floor. It's a common amenity space, so again, providing game rooms, amenity space, meeting rooms for residents, as well as providing access to a terrace that's going to be proposed between the 2 buildings. On the right-hand side of the screen, a similar makeup. Again, you see the community space or amenity space that provides internal room for residents as well as access to the external amenity space. As part of the urban design brief, there was a conceptual design prepared for the terrace podium. This is what you see in front of you. It includes some passive as well as active recreational areas. This space is approximately 2,000 square meters in size, so it has recreational space, it has gardens, raised planter bed space, and then space for people to congregate and meet. This has been designed to take into account some of the recommendations of the wind study with regards to wind mitigation. So this this space will be planned accordingly with appropriate buffers and wind mitigation measures. Quick renderings that you'll see. Top left hand is what you would see at the intersection of King and Sports World. Top right hand is what you would see coming up King Street as if you were moving towards Sports World Drive. Bottom left is what you would see if you were on King Street Drive standing in the commercial plaza directly across the street. And then the bottom right-hand side is what you would see if you were moving down Sports World Drive, south on Sports World Drive, turning left on King. Again, these are just some bird's eye view renderings to give you an idea of scaling massing. And I'm just going to conclude my presentation at this point. It's our opinion that the proposed development provides for high-quality development, creating a landmark project at this location. It's proximate to GO and Grand River Transit services that exist, as well as future light rail services along King Street. It provides access for commuters and is surrounded by a variety and broad range of commercial and community uses to help serve the future residents. That's it for my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Kristen. Any questions? Councillor Chapman, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Are these rentals or condos?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's undetermined at this point what the tenure is going to be. However, I think that there is likelihood that it will be a condominium development.
Okay. When you say there are 30 stories in the highest tower and a 5-story podium, does that mean there are actually 35 stories?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, it's 5 stories plus 25 on top of that for a total of 30 stories.
Okay. Because I think it says 30 stories, a 30-story tower on a 5-story podium. So,
through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's the way that the graphics are labeled. The tower is 30 stories, but it takes into account the 5 stories of podium underneath it.
okay. My other question had to do with, given the location, right? It's out in a commercial area. Is there any chance of considering geothermal or district energy for this site? I mean, district energy thinking about, further development in that area? And maybe that's a question for staff as well.
I think we'll come back to staff later.
Have you considered any of this yourselves?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, not at this point. There are some other sustainable measures that were noted in our sustainability statement prepared in support of the development, but that was not one of the options explored at this point.
Okay, my last question to you then would be about affordable housing units, or is there any hope of that in this development?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so there are 3-bedroom units that are being provided as part of this development in order to cater to families. In addition, the units range in size from about 530 square feet to about 1,000 square feet, which in our opinion potentially addresses the notion of attainable home ownership. There are no affordable housing units proposed as part of the proposed development.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's a 30, an 18, and an 8-story building. How do we get from 30 to 18 to 8 as opposed to just one standard across the 46 stories? I'm I'm looking at the 5 tallest buildings in Kitchener, and they're all, 4 of them are all downtown. And so I'm just concerned about the 30 story, the building. So was there a reason why we have 30, 18, and 8 that you know of?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So first of all, one of the guiding or initial thoughts on this process was phasing development in order to allow for a portion of the site to be developed while the commercial plaza will remain. That is why the 8-story apartment building has been proposed the way it is. The Phase 2 development, which would include the podium and the 18 and 30-story tower, was to be consistent with the city's tall building guidelines, so in terms of tower setbacks, tower separations, massing, et cetera, at the streetscape. And then the idea was to place the 30-story tower at the intersection of King and Sports World Drive to kind of keep it furthest removed away from all surrounding uses and closest to the intersection.
Okay, that's all.
I think Councillor Deneau's question was about how did you get at the 30 stories where that level of height doesn't exist and seems to be quite high. But can you give context to an earlier approved application, which is not to do with you guys, but it's creating that level of development and density in the neighborhood, and I'm guessing the context of support of your application was based on the overall density that's being projected in that neighborhood.
Yes.
Do you recall how high those towers were?
I think through our original, so this application was, the property was first acquired in 2016, and we started having discussions with the city at that point. It was through discussions with the city that this would be a prime candidate for this level of intensification, given its proximity to the future transit station area, as well as where it situates along the extension of the LRT down into Cambridge. So it was a driving factor more from a density and unit count, getting it to that 30 stories, because, again, keeping in mind the guidelines and setbacks. So to achieve the density, it was kind of spreading out that development rather than having a slab building that encased the corner, putting them in towers and separating them in height, also to give it some visual distinction.
Okay.
And Councillor Deneau, when we get to the questions of staff, they'll be able to provide some additional context to that as well. Okay. Thank you very much. That's everyone. All right, back to our delegations. James, sorry, once more. Sorry for the confusion earlier. And you have 5 minutes to make your delegation.
Mr. Chair, Council, thank you for having the time to let us come and speak. I don't know if many of you have had a chance to read all the emails that have been sent in by local residents about this development. Far and away, there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 that are available on your website, and all except one of them are adamantly against this. All of them have the same list of concerns, and so far in this project, not one of them has been addressed in any way. I will go through some of them. The first and probably the most major concern any of us have in this area is the traffic that already exists there. In the traffic study that was done for this project, it clearly states this intersection is inadequate for the current traffic load it has. Our proposal is therefore to add more traffic to it. To me, that seems ridiculous. We're then also proposing to run an ion train down the middle of this road while increasing our traffic load. Any of you who don't know the area, it is the major on-ramp to the 401 West. So every truck, every transport, every delivery vehicle that needs to go west goes down this road. The ion is not going to reduce that. So now we're going to have greatly increased competition for far less road. Your report also goes on to state there is not enough green space for the residents that already live here. Our answer to that is we're now going to add over 1,000 new residents without adding any significant green space. Every item in this report that has been done to ask a question about amenities that are available, traffic, every one of them says what's there now is inadequate. And yet we're proposing to put this massive building in. Anyone who lives in this area can certainly tell you stories of the dangers of trying to drive through this intersection. There are lineups, massive lineups in every direction. You have cars cutting across the intersection through red lights constantly because they've waited so long to get to the light. You have people coming across and pulling U-turns on the residential street with no regard for the fact it is a residential street. We occasionally have tractor trailers on our road, and we have no sidewalks, no street lights, and we all love it that way. But what this proposal is going to do is you're going to add intensely more traffic on our road. The construction that is currently on King Street is cut it down to one lane, and all that traffic that's sitting there waiting pulls off and goes down Edge Hill Drive. So the families that are walking up and down this road with their children have all this traffic trying to rush up this street to beat the traffic on King Street. That is not going to go away when you add a massive building with all these people. Parking for these residents. It is proposed to add less than the minimum required parking for this building. You're going to have 600 plus units with 500 plus parking spaces. Where are these people going to park for real? Because all these extra vehicles right now are going to be forced to try and park in either Costco's parking lot or Sports World parking lot. And when they get tired of getting ticketed and towed, they're going to start parking on our little streets. So we will have vehicles on our front lawns and plugging a street that's just wide enough for 2 cars. Now I know the idea is that these people will be taking transit. The transit place that is down the road, which is the Grand River Transit, and what used to be Greyhound, which is now gone, and the GO Transit, we have children that live all over Ontario come home. We can all tell you that the schedule of that transit doesn't work. We quite often have to drive up to the Via Rail station to pick people up because the schedule at that local bus station does not work for people. So yes, it's there, but people aren't going to use it.
James, if you can begin to wrap up.
Yep. There are a few other significant concerns. One is we're all on wells. You're going to dig a massive hole, which will quite likely interrupt our groundwater supply. The report from the school board about busing says basically there's nowhere to stop the bus to pick up these children, and that they wanted feedback on how that was going to be addressed. That's not commented on anywhere. So none of this is being done for the local residents. The only thing I can see this is being done for is for a private corporation to take a piece of land and make a profit on it. We have not a single person in our residence area that is supportive of this. The previous project showed how well it can work when residents and a contractor work together. This has been the exact opposite. Every comment that's been made has been ignored, and we're just pushing this through. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I'll look to see if there's any questions. I see none. Thank you very much. We'll move on to our virtual delegation, which would be Bruce Cannell. Bruce, welcome, and you have 5 minutes to make a delegation.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Bruce Connell, and my wife and I live on Pennsylvania Crescent in the affected Deer Ridge community. We have 2 concerns about the proposed development. First of all, as we've heard tonight on several occasions, we have reservations about the lack of a nearby park or at least a reasonably sized children's playground for that proposed development. Our home is near the very small Kuntz Park at the Memorial Tower and its tiny parking lot. We are especially worried about the impact of this massive residential development and the second large development planned nearby on the site of the present Mandarin restaurant. We fear that Kuntz Park will become totally overwhelmed with parked cars and people from the new buildings. Secondly, as you've also heard, we are concerned about the greatly increased vehicular traffic along King Street East in the vicinity of the development on a road that is already extremely busy. We have 2 related questions. What can be done to provide adequate outdoor, on-site recreational space for these new buildings, i.e. parkland and the children's playground, and what, if anything, can be done to mitigate the increased traffic along King Street East? I have one more comment, and that is, if this is indeed part of something called a complete community needs parkland and outdoor recreational areas for the residents, and it would not appear that this is part of the proposal. You can definitely add our names and our neighbors, as the gentleman just said, to the opposition to this development and its entire scale. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Connell. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for coming this evening.
You're welcome.
Next, we have questions for, or did you have a question? Okay, next we have questions to staff. So, Mayor Vanderbilt. Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much, Chair Chapman. I guess we heard a number of concerns from the residents, and I'm wondering if staff can comment on how those concerns have been addressed or potentially still could be addressed. In particular, issues around traffic at the intersection and issues around parkland and those types of amenities, because this piece on this side of King Street will be fairly standalone as it's presently proposed. So I'm wondering if staff can comment on that.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, so with respect to traffic, we did receive a transportation impact study at the outset of this application review, and the traffic impact study was prepared by a transportation engineering firm. It's well known in this area. The report states, and I'm just going to pull it open here, based on the findings of the study, it is recommended that no improvements be made to accommodate the development. We also had 3 different transportation departments review the study and review the applications. Those include the region. Both roads that this development front onto are regional roads, Sports World and King Street East. The region had their corridor team review the TIS, the Transportation Impact Study, and concluded that they've accepted the study based on the recommendations of the engineer. The MTO also reviewed the study and had no concerns. And our Transportation Services Division at the city also reviewed this and did not have concerns with the proposal. I can speak to the parkland as well. This area does not have as many parks as we would like for it to have. There are 3 parks in the Pioneer Tower West community, and those are Pioneer Grove Parkette. It is a small park, approximately the size of a single detached lot. It's about 290 meters from the subject property on the other side of King Street East. Going further west, there is Settlers Grove Park, which is an active park, 770 meters away from the subject site. And then going further on, we heard from the second delegation, Mr. Cannell, who mentioned Kuntz Park, also known as Pioneer Tower Park, in the Joseph Shorg area, and that is 2.3 kilometers away from the subject site, so it's a little bit further. Staff does acknowledge this area does need more parks. We will be looking at parks comprehensively in this area through the future major transit station area planning for the Sports World site. It won't be reviewed in isolation for parks. It'll be looking at trails, we'll be looking at land uses and a whole host of other planning related matters, but it's something that's not lost on us. We will be looking at that in the coming months. In the interim, for this particular development, we have worked with the applicant to ensure that there are on-site amenity spaces that are for the recreation of the residents of this proposed tower development. As Ms. Barstow mentioned, there is a large amenity space on the podium between the 2 towers as part of phase 2. There is also ground floor amenity space that's outdoor, and there are indoor amenity spaces as well within the 2 buildings. I know there are a number of other matters that were addressed. I don't know, through you, Mr. Chair, if you'd like me to address further matters.
Certainly from my perspective, yeah, please.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful if you can complete your thought. Yeah.
Okay. Schools were mentioned. So I have received comments from the Waterloo Region District School Board and Waterloo Catholic District School Board, and so children would be bused from this area to local schools. This is the same situation that's happening in Pioneer Tower West across King Street. Those children are also bused. We will be working with the school boards at the time of the future site plan application to determine safe location for drop-off and pickup of children. With respect to parking, the applicant is requesting a parking reduction, albeit a minor parking reduction. The current rate for multiple dwellings is 0.9 parking spaces per dwelling unit. The concept plan that was shown on the screen actually does meet that. It exceeds that. But to make sure that there's some flexibility when the applicant goes to the site plan approval stage, there's been a request for a reduction to 0.85, so 0.05% reduction in the, or 0.05 reduction in the number of parking spaces. So it's fairly minor. There is a lot of active transportation or alternative transportation, I should mention. So there's 2 iExpress bus routes that are in the area. There are also 3 local bus routes. There's a GO transit hub within approximately 300 meters of this site. And there are also pedestrian facilities that are available right now. There are some upgrades being done right now by the region. There's between Sports World Drive and the 401 along the east side of King Street East, or north side of King Street East. There's a multi-use trail that is going to be constructed this year. Yes, this year. And then there will be a further stretch that will extend towards the Grand River in later years, but it is on the docket to be constructed. I also heard about residents not being listened to. I want to assure the residents that I did take the comments seriously. There were a lot of them. Most of the comments, if not all of them, perhaps with the exception of a few, were in opposition to this proposal. We did look at the various concerns. I think a number of them have been adequately communicated through the two delegations, and we've done our best to acknowledge the fact that there isn't adequate parkland in the area, so to provide on-site amenity space. We have looked at parking. We have not deemed that to be a concern. We've looked at a number of these issues and tried to address them to the extent possible, but some of the concerns are not bona fide planning concerns, and so in those particular cases, we're not necessarily able to address the issue. But I want to assure you that I did read all of the comments, some of them several times. I've had multiple phone conversations with residents at length, and had face-to-face meetings via Zoom anyway, or via MS Teams rather. I think that's all I have to say for now.
Well, I think it does help to provide the key concerns laid through the delegations earlier.
So
Do you want to swing?
Yeah, I mean, I have a potential follow-up, but I'll wait.
Yeah, there's a big list ahead of you. Yep, please, if you can. Councillor Dion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been here for 5 months now, and I don't think any report that has come back with a traffic study has recommended improvements when it's been asked about. And so how often do traffic studies actually come back and say, yeah, you know what, we need to widen the road, we need to do this, do that? I'm just curious if anybody knows that answer.
Yeah.
And just keep your mic on, it'll be easier.
Yep, thanks. Through you, Mr. Chair. So I haven't kept track of this particular issue, but certainly there are multiple circumstances I can think of where there is a need for a left-hand turning lane or a signal. I could think of one on the west end where a roundabout was deemed necessary to facilitate a development.
Okay.
So yeah, it does happen on bigger developments for sure.
Okay. And so the reason why I asked this question is, you know, I'm quite familiar with the area. I'm quite familiar with the area on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, heck, even Thursdays and Fridays in and around the Costco area. And so I'm not saying anybody's not being truthful. I just have a hard time having a traffic study that says there's no need for an improvement in that area, when I know very well how congested that area is during peak times. And so, you know, we're adding 1,000 new apartments, or 1,000 new units just down the street. And at that point in time, I asked if there needed to be, you know, any improvements to the traffic area, and I was told no. And now we're adding a whole whack more on a very, very busy intersection, and we're being told, the residents are being told, no, we don't need any improvements of traffic infrastructure. And so, you know, when these traffic studies are performed, and you're probably not the person I should be asking this question to, but, what exactly are they looking at? I have like I said, I have a hard time, looking at this area saying, okay, 2,000 new units.
Councillor Deneau, I think, I'm not trying to interrupt you, just that relation to your concern about the factuality of the response, or I guess what's received back through a traffic impact assessment. Mr. Reedman, I don't know if you want to add something a little bit further as to what's required through that study.
Thank you, through the chair. And so traffic impact analysis does use traffic modeling to project background growth, existing traffic conditions, and future build-out. And so the findings from this report in particular are that at full build-out, 203 AM peak trips and 262 PM peak trips will be added. It also finds that the study area intersections are forecast to operate within the similar levels of service as under existing conditions and background conditions. It does acknowledge that the Sportsville Drive in Baxter Place is forecast to operate at 95% queues, which is a car length beyond the left turn lane at full build out. And so it's similar to what's operating today. And so that is the finding, that the existing conditions, this would be a marginal impact to the existing conditions. So it does acknowledge that these intersections are operating at a higher capacity, but they are still functioning, but there is congestion at peak AM and PM peak times.
Okay. All right. Okay, that helps me a little bit. And as far as I'm going to go back to the 30-story unit. Was there any consideration of just, I know there was a mention of, where'd that comment go, about the skyline? And so was there any thought of just making 48 into 219 units to kind of ease some of that upward growth, to make it not so standoutish? As I indicated, the 4 largest apartment buildings are all relatively close to downtown, where there is a skyline kind of a shift. But in this area, there's not really a skyline shift. And so was there any consideration that you know of that to make them just 219s with the 8 behind it?
So, Mr. Pinnell, as you answer regarding, for massing and design, regarding, I guess, transition, what I had raised before as well was regarding the other approval that recently approved by council and committee where the Mandarin is. I forgot the exact address. Just also remind what the height that we approved on that site as well.
I had that up here, Councillor Singh.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we did not consider different heights. We take the application that we receive from the applicant, and we put that through multiple tests and determine whether that is appropriate. In this case, it passed a number of tests. We looked at shadow impact, as an example. We looked at shadow impact, and there was little, if no, shadow impact on the residential neighborhoods to the west, to the south. Our urban designer looked at the building heights, and we also looked at the official plan, what it has to say. The official plan is a test for determining whether an official plan amendment is appropriate. And in this particular case, it's clear that the mixed-use designation says that building heights and massing will be reviewed through the zoning. And so we've looked at the zoning, we've looked at the urban design, we've looked at shadow impact, and the 30-story building height was appropriate. We don't actually have a zoning category that fits for major transit station areas. That's going to be coming. That's acknowledged in the official plan. There's transitional policies that deal with what we do in the interim. We put this through tests, and it passed. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stevenson, you were looking when I asked that question as well, just for clarity, for providing context. So that, again, I think Councillor Deneau is making a prudent point, saying that this is something out of the ordinary in this neighborhood, but we will have other buildings of high height and massing that have been approved. So understanding as we look at approving this would help to ease some of that concern, perhaps. Go ahead.
Yes, so I can confirm the other site was approved for 3 towers ranging in heights from 14, 15, and 18 stories. So when we look at building height, one of the measures that we look at is space between buildings. So in our tall building guidelines, we have urban design regulations that we look at for a site-specific basis. So oftentimes the buildings are taller, or there's fewer buildings that are taller, so that they could be separated further away from other buildings. And that's to reduce overlook, so that if you are in your unit, you can enjoy views as well as access to daylight, and you're not looking out across at another building directly. So the measure of height is also dependent on the separation, and it is very much a site-specific context. So we have other towers ranging in heights up to 30 stories throughout the city and other areas. Council will be familiar that we have nodes and corridors throughout the entire city where we are starting to see an uptake as residential construction in the form of multiple dwellings has become more popular. So we're seeing those along Weber Street where we didn't have that before. On the west side at Highland and Ira Needles, there's all kinds of nodes and corridors across the city that have been planned for a long time for increased density, and they're now being developed in that way.
Hopefully that helps to clarify some of the concern. Now, I'm very lenient on the time clock. Just for the last two, I think it was necessary to really get to some context and further clarification from staff regarding, I guess, the feedback received from the community and answers to them. And the delegations, of course, Councillor Deneau, you being the ward councillor, I wanted to give you some adage time. If you want to key back in, please do. We have a lengthy list ahead of us, so I'm just going to be a little bit more of a stickler on the time clock going forward. Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Councillor Singh, and I will pay attention to that. And thank you to the delegate that spoke tonight. And I'm sorry that I can't remember your name, but one of the things that you brought up actually was around the school bus loading zone. That's a concern to me as well. And do we have something from the school board about that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we do, and it states that at the time of the site plan application, we will be working with the applicant and the school boards to determine a safe place for students to be picked up and dropped off.
Yeah, that's going to be a big safety concern here with an already very busy corner and with the increased traffic there as well. Wondering also from an economic development perspective, another thing that the item that the gentleman had brought up was around the fact that this is the major corridor to the westbound 401 for trucks and transportation and for people traveling in that direction. To me, that's an important consideration in terms of trying to get goods in and out of town. If you could comment on that, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So again, we did hear from the Region of Waterloo. This is Sports World as well as King Street are both regional roads, and they reviewed thoroughly the TIS, the Transportation Impact Study, and accepted the recommendations and the conclusions of that study. And so they have looked into truck traffic as well as commuter traffic through that study and other types of traffic as well. And so we're trusting the region that they are reviewing adequately the proposal through their lens, and trusting that they've looked at all of this.
Thank you, and I don't like to question that either, but it already is very busy, and my concern as well might be that, traffic, water, et cetera, always takes the easiest route, and would we be then perhaps pushing this traffic onto Homer Watson or different places? There's only 2 routes, basically, to that westbound 401. And again, from that economic development perspective, I think it's really important that we, have good routes for people in and out of town without overcrowding either one of those. Homer Watson's already very busy. This is already very busy. So I'll leave that there. Thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. I also had a question about the school pickup. Once the LRT is in, which is probably going to be a couple years, Like, there's already concerns about where that pickup might be. Will that not reduce it to like zero opportunity for pickup places?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so the LRT platform would be 300 meters to the northwest of the subject property, so it would not be at the intersection of Sports World and King Street East. So LRT platforms and infrastructure wouldn't be influencing or affecting the location.
But are the tracks not running right in front of the site?
They would be running, from what I understand from the region, within the right-of-way, like within the center median of the right-of-way of King Street.
Okay.
Mr. Stevenson, do you want to add something?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So the school board is providing advisory comments at the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment stage now. And what they're advising is that they don't prefer and they don't want to have their vehicles enter private property. That's the nature of the comment. It's an advisory comment right now, letting the applicant know during the first application that that's a detail that will need to be sorted out. And the school board will be involved in selecting the locations for where their bus stops would be.
Okay, I guess sure. Okay. What about the size of the large amenity space on the ground level? How large actually is it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it may be better for the applicant to respond to that. I can find it. It's going to take me some time, though, to go through the urban design brief to recall that detail, unless the applicant knows.
Ms. Bearsdale, would you be able to come down if you have those facts? Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just going to flip through my notes because I've got this all written down. So the ground floor amenity space is approximately 900 square meters. So that is the area that is between tower, or phase 1 and phase 2. There's also a portion that wraps in behind phase 1, which probably is about 300 square meters of space devoted. Now, of course, that would have to be accordingly planned for and designed. The terrace has 2,000 square meters of amenity space for residents. So that will include active and passive space, sitting areas, gardens, etc. The phase 1 has approximately 150 square meters of internal amenity space. So that would be media rooms, conference rooms, those types of spaces. And then Tower B has approximately the same amount of indoor amenity space on the 5th story that would provide for access to the terrace.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
I just want to go back to my earlier question about geothermal and district energy. Do we see this as an opportunity?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's my understanding that this is not a candidate area for district energy. We're focusing our efforts closer to downtown, and then once we've assessed the downtown area for district energy, we may be able to apply this in other areas, but we're not there yet.
And geothermal?
The region did not provide any comments with respect to geothermal energy restrictions. Sometimes they do, oftentimes they do, depending on the area. So this may be an area where geothermal is possible.
So it doesn't preclude it, would really depend on the developer to see if they want to utilize that as an energy source.
Correct.
And that could be something that would be weeded out through the site plan process.
Correct.
Okay, I have one final question, and that is, are we talking here about the 85-1 or Crosby?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're dealing with Crosby for this.
So these areas have already been rezoned?
Correct.
And we're going from commercial to residential, even though, pardon me? Well, mixed with residential, right?
Yes.
Commercial doesn't allow residential. So, that's a pretty dramatic change for a bylaw that's already been updated within the last 2 years, and we're just ignoring it and going from a commercial site to this other totally different site? Maybe you can just comment on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So this is This is very typical. We often get, yeah, I should mention that MTSAs, the zoning bylaw has not been updated for MTSAs. So there is no zoning that's been tailored to major transit station areas anywhere in the city at this point. So it's incumbent on private developers, if they have a particular development, to rezone. Do you want to add on to that?
And, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'll leave it on from now on. Through you, Mr. Chair. So council may recall that we made a decision when we were applying Crosby not to apply it to our central MTSA stations, as we had already started that work as part of the neighborhood planning reviews. In the central station areas, that's where we're going to be bringing our growing together work. So that's our land use planning framework for all of the stations where ION currently operates, except for Blockline and Fairway. Blockline and Fairway will be our next major transit station area that we will apply updated land use framework, followed by Sports World. So the application that we saw for the Mandarin and the application we're seeing this evening, these are in advance of our MTSA implementation, which is not unlike all of the applications we've seen within our central neighborhoods. As Mr. Pennell had pointed out, we have not yet introduced MTSA, so it is not surprising to see land use changes proposed under the framework. Our current, Crosby brought forward basically a new version of the zoning from our old bylaw in this location. This application and the MTSA work that will follow will bring a whole new land use framework that will support rapid transit.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Michaud.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I'll go back to the park space. I know that there's 3 parks across King Street. There's nothing on the others, on the side where this developer is going. Has there been any discussion with the applicant to provide funding to ensure that there will be more park space on that side?
So through you, Mr. Chair, at the site plan approval stage, we will be taking parkland dedication. That's a tool under the Planning Act. That's how we acquire parkland. So we will get that at the site plan stage.
Okay, that's great. And then the last question I have is, there's been a number of questions that were basically asked and need answers from the region. So before we get to the point where council, gets to approve this or not approve it, will those questions all be answered? Will the region have all the answers that have been asked here tonight?
So with respect, perhaps you could clarify.
With respect to traffic reports, I don't know what else is there. There was a lot of questions that came back that you answered, that the region needs to do this, the region needs to do that. So there's a lot of stuff the region needs to do, apparently, before something like this should go. So will the region have done their due diligence and work before this comes back to us?
The question is, have all the feedback been received from the region?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, all of the feedback that we need to make a decision tonight on the OPA ZBA has been received by the region. When we get to the site plan approval stage, through the site plan application stage, we will require detailed comments regarding the physical design of the building, but we're not there yet. Right tonight, we're looking at the change in land use designation and zoning, but the exact physical parameters of the building have not been determined, and the region will weigh in further at that stage.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Vavanovich.
Thank you very much. Just as a follow-up, as we look at this proposal, not sure if staff is familiar with the area of Trafalgar and Highway 5 in Oakville, but I guess I look at this and think it's fairly similar in the sense, both in terms of the busyness of the intersection, the retail and so on that's in the area, residential that's stepped away, not unlike Pioneer Tower West, and yet we see several larger scale apartment buildings being built either have been built or under construction right now in that corner. Is that sort of the thinking that's been applied here in terms of looking at it from a planning point of view?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we look at every development proposal on its own merits. So what's been done in one particular area isn't necessarily applied to another area. We've looked at this proposal against the official plan, and again, we've looked at the urban design, looked at shadow impact, we looked at tall building guidelines, and determined that in this particular context, on the merits, it passes the test. But we're not trying to apply principles from one site or one area to another.
But I guess where I'm going with it is, I mean, this is not a unique set of circumstances. I mean, we're seeing this in a number of urban environments, particularly as we look at trying to ensure there's a variety of housing options in any one area, and also, you know, dealing with the fact that there is a housing supply crisis, and making sure that there's you know, there's added supply with some variety happening. So is that, I guess what I'm trying to get at, is that sort of the thinking that has been applied to this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so I'm not 100% sure on the question, but if you're asking whether we're considering housing supply, I mean, absolutely. That's a primary goal, certainly, of the province. We're seeing that in recent legislation that's been passed. We're seeing that in the Places to Grow provincial policy statement all the way down through the policy. So absolutely. The province is very clear on especially if there's existing infrastructure, existing transit, especially higher order transit in a particular neighborhood, and there's opportunity for intensification, residential intensification, it's looked at as absolutely. That's something some place where we should grow.
Okay, going back to, I mean, I'll be honest, I like Councillor Deneau, like in principle, I'm supportive of this kind of project in this location. I am struggling a little bit with the transportation study, and so when it looked at its analysis, did it look at it in the context of when LRT is in place, and you know these additional 600 and some units are going to be in place, and the traffic flow that'll come with it? Because yeah, I mean, I've gone to the Sports World Drive area for shopping purposes as well, or dining purposes, and have experienced some of the traffic challenges from time to time. And so, particularly, during holiday season and so on. And so I'm just wanting to make sure that, this has been factored in both by the consultants and the region in reviewing this.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I'm not a transportation engineer. I probably shouldn't say too much in that regard, but I can say that the region has reviewed this thoroughly, and I know in my conversations with them, they've been looking at the complete, when they reviewed the transportation impact study, when they reviewed the applications, they were thinking real-world application of this, real-world circumstances for this development review. They're looking at LRT. They're in conversation with Peter Lynn, who's the project manager for LRT and some of the other sub-projects in the Sports World King Street East area. They're looking at it holistically, so it's not lost on them. They're not looking at one very scoped circumstance here. They're looking at the big picture, and we're taking the regional comments at their word that this is an appropriate location. Given the transportation situation.
Mr. Reedman, do you want to add anything further? I'm trying to click you, but it's not working.
Probably got to turn someone off or
yes, that's
the number
why.
of participants.
I will take one staff off. Sorry, Mr. Still.
Thank you, through the chair. And so the traffic impact assessment or study did not factor in LRT ridership because it isn't a fully constructed project. But from my experience working on LRT projects in other communities, LRT does take traffic pressure off these corridors. And so I know from the current construction of the King Street corridor that the region is protecting for future LRT there. So they are reconstructing that corridor with that in mind. But likely changes will occur or be tweaked when that if and when that LRT moves forward. But it does form a viable alternative, especially given that once it extends to Cambridge, it would relieve some of the traffic that's going through that corridor between Cambridge and Kitchener and Waterloo.
And if I can just finish up, Mr. Chair. Is there not some thinking that at some point the province may in fact put a right turn lane off the Highway 8 extension? So as it goes left towards Toronto, that at some point in the future there might in fact be a westbound, so that would take traffic off of King Street at that time?
Mr. Reedman, go ahead.
Through the chair, so there has been thinking of adding different ramps, and so I'm not sure where the province is at right now on that, and so that's something I can follow up with our Director of Transportation.
Yeah, I think that might be helpful information to have for when this comes back to council. And the only thing I would actually maybe ask Ms. Barrisdale to come back on is go back and take a look and see, is there anything more that can be done on the existing property from an amenity space point of view? Yeah, and I'll leave the rest until comments.
I think I see her taking notes, and that's something perhaps that hopefully they can explore and bring back as part of council meeting. Councillor Deneau.
All right, this will be quick, I promise. When was the traffic study completed? Mr. Reedman, do you know?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do have the study up. Just one moment. This was completed in May of 2021.
So I guess if I'm correct, though, it wouldn't have taken into account the 3 towers we approved on the Mandarin site then, right?
Likely not, but I do know that the region was well aware of the project and of both projects, and I don't believe there is an update to this, but the region was certainly aware of both and acknowledged both of them in my correspondence.
Okay, so I know, like I noticed the traffic study didn't come with the meeting attachments and stuff like that. Can we get a copy of that traffic study? And I guess, is it normal not to have, especially something that seems like it's percolating, lots of concern about with the residents? Is that not something that would normally come with the report, with all the other attachments? We have Schedule Bs, Schedule As, but we don't have a traffic study report. Or is that a regional thing that they have to give to us?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so the traffic study has been inputted, has been uploaded rather to the website, so I can send you a link to that if that's helpful, Councillor Deneau.
Yeah, that'd be great, but I guess my question is that something that normally doesn't happen then? Because it's a regional road, it doesn't come with the information we have here. If it was a city road, a municipal road, will we get that information ahead of time?
So, Mr. Pinnell, is the application, the corresponding material supporting documents, have they been uploaded on the GIS mapping?
Yes. So there, if you go to planningapplications.ca, you can do a search for this particular address. You can pull up all of the studies and reports. Studies and reports that accompany a OPA ZBA submission are not included with the staff report. In this particular case, we've included the urban design brief because that's something that we're recommending be endorsed by council to guide future development at the site plan stage. But the other documents, the environmental studies, the traffic, and the others, engineering studies, have not been appended, and it's not typical to attach those to the report.
Okay. Mr. Reedman, do you want to provide anything further?
Yeah, through the chair, I would just like to point out that through the Development Services Review, we made a commitment to post all of the background studies, which is above and beyond the requirements of the Planning Act. The reason why it's not included in the staff report is because the volume of the pages of these studies are significant, and it would create an inaccessible document for council and members of the community to be able to navigate with thousands and thousands of pages of sub-studies.
Okay, thank you.
But it can be accessed online. Yeah. All right. I see no other questions from the committee to staff. I'll take a mover to the item, and then we can go into comments. Moved by Councillor Clancy. I'll take comments. There's no one for comments. Oh, we do now. Mayor Renneman.
Yeah, so just very, very briefly, I do understand, some of the concerns that we've read about and heard from the residents in the community. There's no doubt that this is a change to this corridor, but it's also a corridor that is going to, quite frankly, have better transportation amenities than many other areas in the city, both in terms of the role that GO Transit plays there, the role that the LRT will play when Phase 2 is constructed, and access to the highways and so on. When you look at the workplace lands that are already being utilized in that area, and the fact that much of our growth in terms of employment lands is on the Cambridge side of the border, but off of Sports World Drive. There'll be many people who are, looking to work and look to be close to work in an area, like that, and would appeal to this kind of residential accommodation in that area. And as I pointed out, and I encourage others who haven't had an opportunity to look at areas like Highway 10 and Trafalgar and Highway 5 in Oakville, because I see it as being actually very similar as an overall concept. I do have some concerns around traffic, and believe that the professionals that have been charged with that work and that responsibility, both in terms of the consultants and the region, have appropriately reviewed this. I do hope that between now and council, Ms. Barrisdale will go back to her client and explore, are there any ways of adding additional amenity space in the area, because I think that is important. Recognizing there will be some single individuals or some maybe some young families and so on that are going to want some kind of spaces to accommodate their needs. But with that, I'm prepared to support staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Clancy?
Yeah, in many ways, it makes sense to have folks living close to the kind of transit and shops and so on. I just want to echo other people's concerns that area of town feels like a big parking lot, and so raising children near that is, I'd like to see an investment by the developer and the city to add trees, look to some of the underutilized parking in that proximity for a potential park. And I also just want to echo Councillor Chapman's comments that we are in a climate crisis, and so to build new big buildings like this that rely on fossil fuels to heat and cool is highly problematic. We're looking at municipalities across North America that are banning the implementation in a matter of 3 years of new natural gas infrastructure. So I do encourage developers to come back and consider rooftop solar, and other types of renewables, because I'm worried that this building might be in a heat island, right? It's surrounded by asphalt. And so, greening is important for that, and also really thinking seriously about putting in new fossil fuel burning heating and cooling. So I do like some of the considerations, discussion about materials consideration, like maybe that can be a serious consideration, and the bird, I think there was comment about bird collision measures. So the amenities look lovely, but I just feel like the surrounding area is very asphalt heavy. So Maybe as a city, we can consider additional greening measures just to cool it off, give people shade, give people green. That's good for your mood. But otherwise, I am supportive because of the proximity to transit and other kind of things people need in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Quick question, though. I forgot to ask my own, if the committee will allow me. With Phase 2, a lot of the rationale regarding transit and general mobility in that neighborhood is, I think, associated to the ION station that's going to be nearby for the Phase 2 of the ION network. But we don't have firm timelines on that. So because there is a Phase 2 of this project, do we have a mechanism to tie the Phase 2 part of the development to when ION gets constructed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I suppose that would mean like further negotiation with the applicant, or a refusal of the application and a new application to consider phasing. I mean, certainly, actually another option would be a holding provision to be applied to prevent development of Phase 2 until such time as ION comes online. That actually would probably be the best option if you wanted to go that route. That's not what staff is recommending, but that is an option.
Okay, well, at least that will allow us some time before council meeting to have some further consultation based on the comments that are raised related to transit. I hear transit is probably one of the most primary issues regarding the development and the fact that it's relying on the LRT station that's going to come in line. So that's something that perhaps with more detail that's going to be received on the traffic impact assessment and the regional comments, that's something perhaps the committee can look at or council can look at a later time. Thank you. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is there are a number of things that have yet to be, or that we might be able to still get more information on. One is, the geothermal idea, asking the region if this is something that can or cannot be realized on this property. More information on the school bus pickup, taking into account the fact that this is, the moment they bring the ION, I assume they're going to have to lose some traffic laneways, and what that would look like. The traffic study that was done in 2021 during the pandemic, and what might that look like today. The parkland amenity space. So I'm just wondering if we should, maybe you can first tell me, can I ask a question?
Yeah, I did.
Like, can some of these things be reported back to us before council? Like, I'm wondering if we should defer voting on this until we get all of this information, because I think it could be valuable information for us to be able to make a better decision.
So, Councillor Chapman, that's something that the committee would have to determine on our own. Staff have put forward a recommendation, and the recommendation...
Yeah, no, I'm not asking for the deferral. I'm not asking them for a deferral. I'm asking them if some of this information that I just rhymed off would be, you'd be able to collect between now and council.
Yes.
Yes, okay, so then I'd like to move a deferral until the council meeting.
Okay. Mr. Stevenson, do you want to add?
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to contribute. I just want to set expectations. So some of the items, the school bus pickup and other items, geothermal, I think Mr. Pennell said that those won't be determined till site plan in his conversations with the region and with the school board. So I don't imagine we would have any additional information in a few weeks. I think what we are happy to connect with the applicant to look at amenities and discuss what opportunities may be there. Mr. Reedman was speaking about the westbound 401 on-ramp, so we can connect with our colleagues at the province to determine if there's any additional timing to allow for that highway connection for the Maple Grove industrial area, which would have a mass reduction of truck traffic throughout this neighborhood. And we can look at if there is any additional information on ION timing from our regional colleagues, but we have not heard that, so I don't suspect we'll have any additional information. So we will endeavor, but I just want to set expectations that some of this will have to be dealt with at site plan and not at this stage.
Okay. Councilor Michaud?
Yeah, I will support Councillor Chapman's deferral. I think that there's a lot of questions at stake here that I think we really need answers in order to make an informed decision. I don't, this doesn't sit well with me, with not getting this information from the region first, because it is in a very, well, a commercial mixed area where there's no residential at all. This would be the first of its kind there, and I think those questions need to be answered.
Okay, regarding the timing, where are we on the application timeline? Would that cause any concern? Even though that we're looking at deferring to only council? And the question would be, would it be prudent to a referral as opposed to a deferral? And the timing as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're currently not under the Bill 109 timelines. However, this application has been going on for quite some time. I suppose the applicant probably could appeal, but we're not under the Bill 109 timeline, so it's not strict in that way.
Okay, all right, and that's helpful. And does it matter if it's a referral or a deferral? That doesn't matter, okay. So a motion for deferral has been put on the table. Only comments of timing, there are none. All those in favor? And opposed? Oh, there's no opposed. Carries. All right, so I think staff are pretty well in mind, knowing the questions that have been raised. Are there any clarification questions required from staff to make sure that nothing is being missed?
No.
Okay, good. All right, just wanted to confirm. In that case, the item has been deferred to council with varied information that will come in time before we make that decision. All right, that's the last item on our agenda. Can I get a mover? Oh, there's a for information item, significant planning application update. That's something that we've reviewed. There are no questions of that, so I'll take a mover to adjourn. Councillor Chapman, all those in favor, opposed, and that carries. Meeting adjourned. And thank you, everyone.